Okay, so hi everyone. I'm Aviva Peisach, and in the next 20 minutes, I'll be sharing with you our fascinating journey of improving troubleshooting times across weeks. It's a journey of despair, hope, innovation, and teamwork, or should I say guild work. And I hope you'll gain some useful tools, practices, and insights of it. To make sure you do, thank you. I'll give you some cues for the cheers, don't worry. To make sure you do, I've planted these QR codes throughout the presentation, but the Wi-Fi here is so bad that I wouldn't count on it. But you'll get the presentation later with all the resources and links in there. Okay, so for those of you who don't know me, I'm Aviva Peisach, and I have many hats. So I'm both the head of the Server Guild and also the head of the identity company. By the way, cheers again. That was the cue. Thank you. But in addition to that, I'm also the proud mother of 3 amazing kids and the proud wife of 1 amazing husband. And since last year, I started teaching coding in an elementary school. And my true occupation is that I'm a belly dancer. Yes, you heard right. It's belly, not ballet. And I'm also the author of a published children's book. But in addition to all these hats, one additional hat and passion I have is resilience. I'm really passionate about resilience, which is why I've been dealing with troubleshooting, which is the story I'm going to share with you today. So back to our journey. Back in 2020, we were faced with a huge challenge. Now I know what you're thinking, but it was not only the corona that we were faced with. Our production troubleshooting times were skyrocketing. When I say skyrocketing, our median time of troubleshooting was over an hour. Okay, troubleshooting, we keep saying this word. Let's make sure we're referring to the same thing. So troubleshooting is the process of finding the root cause for a production incident. Timeline-wise, troubleshooting happens between the time a production incident is acknowledged till it's resolved, right? This is the time we're looking for the root cause and trying to fix the issue. You're probably familiar with the terms MTTR, medium time to acknowledge, and MTTR, medium time to resolve. So the way we measure troubleshooting and fix time is by MTTR minus MTTA. In some cases, and ideally speaking, the resolution and act time could be very close together. These would be in cases where I either know the root cause of the issue to begin with, like if I'm GAing a new version and I'm monitoring production really closely and then I see that something goes wrong, right? I'll immediately revert and I'll quickly fix the issue. It could have been also that I don't know the root cause, but I'm just following best practices and guidelines. And the first thing I'll do when I acknowledge a production incident is just revert any production changes that have recently happened, like recent GAs or recent experiments, and I might have resolved the issue even without knowing the exact root cause. But in many other cases, and back in 2020 more frequently than not, act time and resolve time were much further apart. So as I mentioned, over an hour, and this was actually 65 minutes median time for troubleshooting and resolving the issue. So needless to say, but I'll say it anyway, that long-term troubleshooting times mean poor resilience, right? It means unhappy users because they're having their business and sites impacted with long downtimes. And it also means frustrated developers and engineers lost trying to effectively troubleshoot an issue while having this huge production stress. So we decided to put our minds together and think of how can we address this issue. When I say we, by the way, I mean a group we called Postmortem Angels. This was a group of production-savvy engineers. We were meeting on a bi-weekly basis. We have some Postmortem Angels, previous Postmortem Angels with us, by the way. Woohoo! Yeah, that was a semi-cue. We were reviewing recent incidents together, trying to learn from each other's experience and improve the overall week's resilience. So we decided to take on troubleshooting and think of how to improve it. At first, we felt like this was an impossible task. Why? Let me take you through our trail of thought. We know that Wix is composed of numerous number of companies, right? Each with its own products, architecture, flows. Therefore, we assumed that troubleshooting would probably behave the same, meaning that each company has its own unique troubleshooting practices, and that it's more of an art than a science, and that it's only the most veteran of engineers who really experienced production for a long time that know how to troubleshoot and pass this information from generation to generation. So if these troubleshooting practices are really unique per company, there's nothing common across Wix, right? And there's nothing we can actually generalize and improve, which is kind of depressing, right? This was a downer cue. Depressing, right? Thank you. But did you notice that I said the word assume several times? We know that we have numerous companies, different infrastructures, different architectures, and therefore we assume that the troubleshooting practices are also different. But nothing masks reality better than making assumptions. So we decided not to make assumptions, and instead research and map the actual issue and the actual situation. So we took a few representatives from different teams. These are the veterans, okay, the veterans of these teams, and asked them to map their own company's troubleshooting practices. So they went along, did that, and came back with the results. And we were astonished to discover that actually over 80% of the troubleshooting practices were actually common across these companies. So let's look at this common troubleshooting flow that was so repetitive across companies. So typically, when a team encounters a production incident, they would first check if this is a Wix-wide incident, right? In which case, all they have to do is probably just monitor, wait till it's resolved, and verify it's resolved for them as well. But if it is specific to their product and company, they would first revert. If they follow the best practices, they would revert any recent changes in production. So they would revert any GAs, they would revert any experiments that's recently done. If that doesn't help, they'll look into what are the top exceptions at this point, right? And then they would drill down to try and find the root cause. And there are common immediate suspects we found across teams. These are things like, is there a single site that's causing most of the issues? Is there a single DC or pod where most of the errors are generated from? Or maybe it's a downstream service that I'm calling that's actually generating the issue. So this is when we felt like we struck gold. If so many of our practices are common across Wix, there is something to generalize, automate, and improve, right? So how can we automate and improve these common practices? We decided to address these in 4 parallel streams. The first of which is monitoring. If we know we have common root causes across different products, we can actually extend our monitoring and monitor them specifically, these specific root causes. On the training front, if these are repeating common practices, we can make sure that our engineers are practiced on these troubleshooting practices before they get to a real-life production scenario. And if these are indeed repetitive, common troubleshooting steps, we can actually automate them rather than having us do it manually again and again with every production incident. And the fourth pillar we were looking at is external tools that could make our troubleshooting experience more effective. So let's see how we put this all into action. On the monitoring side, in the Grafana Error Analytic dashboard, we added this new area called distribution. This whole area is distribution, which gives you a high level, a bird's eye view of the actual different root causes and shows you the spread between them. So you can very quickly see if there's an evident root cause that's screaming to your eye and is probably the right root cause. So let's look at some example. So first of all, we can see the error class spread. So we can see how the errors are spread across different classes and different error messages. So we can see who's more evident than others. Then we can also look at these immediate suspects and see if there is a specific pod that's causing most of the issue, or a specific site. Other interesting spreads that we've added is the kind spread, which is actually what source of traffic is generating most of the errors. Is it really real production traffic, or maybe it's automation testing traffic, like sled traffic, or maybe it's migration. Okay, that really helps pinpoint the issue. We also have a user agent spread, so we can quickly see if there's a specific device or browser causing most of the errors. So that's pretty cool, right? Q, thank you. So while we are on the uplifting note, I want to mention that the people who actually defined these spreads and added them was a group of guild masters who focused on finding the most useful spreads, and they worked together with the monitoring infra team to create this. Yes. Okay, the second front was training. What we did is built a training kit we called Something to Troubleshoot. Something to Troubleshoot is actually a simulator, simulating common production issues on a synthetic service in production, and it allows the trainee to monitor, troubleshoot, find the root cause, and fix it. Okay, all in a simulated, easy environment. The type of error that the Something to Troubleshoot simulates are things like error spike, memory leaks, customer lags, and much more. I won't give you too many spoilers. And just the fact that engineers get to practice this in a safe environment both extends their expertise and confidence to when they really actually get to an on-call production live situation, so they can feel much more confident. When can you take this? I'm sorry, forgot that. The Something to Troubleshoot was actually created and is still created in Guild Weeks. Okay, so if you have a scenario in mind that's also common, just join a Guild Week, a Resilience Guild Week, and you can extend with additional use cases. So when can you take this wonderful training kit? First of all, anytime. If you had Wi-Fi, you could get the link immediately. But we've also incorporated it into our server onboarding. So people are going through, server developers are going through this training kit as part of their crash course 3 months into their role, and also as part of a new booster course called the Production Hero, where they do the more advanced troubleshooting use cases. And also, they can always take it as a refresher before their on-call shift. Okay, on the automation side, so you remember, if these practices and root causes are frequent and repetitive, we can actually automate finding the actual root cause and suggesting next steps. This is where I want to introduce you to the alert enricher. What the alert enricher does is it actually listens to the urgent Slack channel and to alerts coming into your Slack channel. It would analyze the data, find the most evident root cause, and suggest next steps for you, which could be either continuing to troubleshoot and narrow down the issue, or actually how to resolve it. And it adds these enrichments. Oh, spoiler alert. It adds these enrichments to the thread on the Slack channel itself. Okay, so you get it all in one place in your Slack channel. And I spoiled it to myself, but this, again, the alert enricher, was originally built in Guild Weeks as well, and about 2 years ago was taken on by the build-up team. Yes, thank you, build-up team and friends, who actually productized and rewritten the whole product. Okay, so let's see some examples of these enrichments. So first of all, we have the Petri experiments and the recent GA enrichments. So alert enricher would check for us what recent GAs and experiment changes happened on our service that's currently getting the alert. Okay, and it would allow us to easily get to lifecycle or dev portal or guinea pig to quickly revert. Okay? We know this was the root cause. It also enriches recent configuration changes, Kubernetes configuration changes that happened recently on my service that could have caused the issue as well. And it also lists the top exceptions, and in addition, it already checks for us, is there a specific site that generated more errors than others? If so, it would specify it for us and also give us a quick link to actually stop the traffic to that specific site. And another cool enrichment is the sled enrichment. If most of the errors came from automation traffic, it would highlight it to us and would quickly allow us to stop automation for us. I know you're excited, but more quietly now. Another type of side enrichment that we have is Ciona. Ciona is a product or enrichment built by the Ecom company. And it actually allows us to specify troubleshooting steps, which are maybe more verbal. If I'm in a payment company and if a specific error comes from a specific payment provider, I know I need to reach out to this specific person and do these and these steps. I can specify it in Ciona for that specific alert. Okay? And next time the alert would come up, anyone that's watching the urgent channel would see the instructions. What should I do when I get this kind of alert? We also have many enrichments in the works, such as enrichments that show if there is an active migration happening in the background, if there's a traffic switch happening in the background, which goes back to checking if there is a cross-wix issue, also if there's any active resource tuning, and also top caller or callee from my service that produced most of the errors. Hold on, I'm getting a news flash. Thanks, Shlomi. Shlomi just updated me that we have 2 of these enrichments already live in production. You're getting better at this. So these are the active migration. If there's an active migration happening on your service, you'll get an enrichment there. And also the top callee. So if, again, there's a downstream call that's generating many errors, I'll get it listed here, and also a quick link to their Grafana board, so I can continue and troubleshoot there. Okay, behind the scenes, in terms of the alert enricher, it was built with open platform in mind, so the enrichment part itself is actually an SPI and could be easily extended. So what can you take away from alert enricher? First of all, if you don't have it on for any reason, first of all, shame on you, but you can easily enable it. Just mention alert enricher in your urgent channel. If you want to tune your enrichments, let's say that your company has very frequent GAs, okay, and therefore you would want alert enricher to just notify you on the last GAs that happened in the last hour instead of the default 2 hours that it has out of the box. Okay, you can do it via the alert enricher back office. You can just go in, tune your enrichments for your specific product and Slack channel. And if you have an idea for an enrichment, again, either relevant to your specific company or relevant to everyone, just go ahead and implement it via an SPI. It's as easy as that. And you'll see the link to the documentation once you get the presentation later on. Okay, so fourth, last pillar, is the third-party tools. We've introduced a really exciting and powerful tool called Rookout that allows us to do production debugging. What is this production debugging? You can put a breakpoint on your code and specify whether you want to monitor it or debug it on a specific pod or your entire DC. And then you'll get notified once it reaches that code, this line of code in production on that specific pod. You'll get notified, and you can actually see the stack trace and the variant values at that given time, okay, in an IntelliJ-like UI. It doesn't actually stop the production code. It just gives you the ability to actually debug things at the time where the breakpoint happened, which is super useful because before we had rookout, what we needed to do, if we wanted to continue and troubleshoot the issue, if the root cause wasn't evident enough, we had to add logs, GA, monitoring in production, add more logs till we got to the root cause, right? And rookout actually allows us to do it live, and it really, really shortens the troubleshooting times. Sorry. OK, we're very close to the end. You also have an enrichment of rookout, so you don't need to remember it's there. It would shout it to you. And it's been a packed 19 minutes. I'm always already in a minus. So let's try and quickly recap on our journey. So we first mapped the common troubleshooting practices. We found there were more than we thought. We created the training key, the something to troubleshoot. We enhanced our monitoring. We created the automation, which is the alert enricher, and we introduced rookout. So given all these efforts and innovation, aren't you a bit curious of what were the end results? Quickly, yes. Yes, you are. OK, so I'm super happy and proud to share with you that since 2020, with all these efforts put in, we managed to achieve an astounding improvement of 47% in troubleshooting time. I think that's super impressive, but even more impressive when we consider the fact that our production environment didn't keep still this time, right? We had more lines of code, more developers, and much more production incidents, and still we managed to create this improvement. Now, improvement is a lifelong journey. It never ends, and I'm sure if we continue to put our focus on it, we'll just continue and improve. So quickly, the takeaways. If you're not familiar with any of the tools that I've showed to you today, get familiar with them, use them. If this inspired you and you have an automation in mind, just write an SPI for it. And more generally, on a more general note of takeaways, don't assume. Okay, always map and research. If we would have stuck to the assumption that there's nothing common and there's nothing we could improve on, nothing would have happened. Okay, so always be data-driven, always check what's the actual state. Two last points. Really, one of the main takeaways is that the guild, which is both the guild members, guild masters, and guild Wix, rock. There's no specific team in Wix whose responsibility it is troubleshooting or resilience. If it wasn't for the passion, the effort, and the contribution of all these people, nothing would have happened. And last but not least, anything is possible. Right? We were faced with this huge challenge that seemed impossible, but we put our efforts and innovation to it, and in this way, we can resolve anything. So many people were involved in all these efforts that I shared. You have many of these faces here, but I'm sure there are many more here in the crowd and outside that help and contribute, make all these things happen. So let's give them a big round of thank yous.